PETA, podcast every day in April, where during the month of April you'll hear about different topics and different stories and discussions that I have on my mind and on my heart to discuss and address for this month. It may be sports related, it may be stuff related. You may even hear some guests on the show that you may haven't even seen or heard from me addressing on the show. But this is PETA, and this is Podcast Every Day in April. Hope you enjoy. Episode 157 of The Past is here. Normally I'd say we're back, but we are here because now we're starting our new series. I know I always say we like I'm talking, referring solely to it's somebody with me, but we is referring to those who are listening, including myself, who's sharing this content with you all. As you all know, I am your host, Brian, BT, however you want to call it. We are doing an episode every day for the month of April. This is kind of my way of getting exposure and kind of networking with other podcasters and those who are in the skill. If you are following on Instagram at Past Podcast, Twitter Past Podcast, Snapchat, I'm going to work on using Past Podcast more frequently, Facebook Past Podcast, and also if you are not already doing so, you'll want to go to pastpodcast.com and check out the website. I do post the episodes there daily. They'll be daily for this month, but you will get the weekly episodes blended in as well. If you want to go back and listen to any previous episodes, and also if you are on the page and you're trying to figure out how to subscribe, you can subscribe directly through that page by getting an email. Once I post it on that website, you automatically get an email immediately. It's kind of a way of me getting it out there if you don't have iTunes or don't have any other recording apps or podcast listening apps. Longer intro than normal, but as always, I like to share if you are looking to get into podcasting and you want to start off recording, I would recommend, from my personal experience, using Spreaker.com. I've been using their site for a couple of years. Been in limbo. I've talked about it before on a few episodes, whether I'm going to convert and redesign the name, but I don't want to lift all of the podcasts and push them over to another site. But that's kind of what we're thinking on as far as changing the name from Brate Podcast. But for right now, we'll kind of keep things the same. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And of course, the voice you are hearing is thanks to the Blue Yeti microphone. If y'all looking to invest in a microphone, I would definitely recommend Blue microphone. It has been my go-to. Today, since it is April the 1st, and it is kind of an ironic April the 1st, I thought I would start off the podcast a little different and talk about two, one being a holiday and one being, I guess, a tradition, and kind of give a brief overview of both and how it all got started, just to kind of give people a bit of an understanding, because most of the time we hear the term Easter, and many people know Easter as being, the day of resurrection. In most minds, it's typically the day when people go to church and dress to the nines, or folks come to church that haven't been to church in a while. So you go through that whole ordeal. And I'm like, before I continue, I don't want it to sound as though I'm knocking or going against anyone who is a member or does attend church. Like, it's it's all preference and choice. But I am a member of a church as well. I haven't been going to my church as consistently as I would like to, but as life as it goes, things happen. So that's nothing to really sit and give like a massive amount of attention to. In a moment, I will briefly go over April Fools and kind of how that got started. And we'll just kind of let this be like a free flow podcast for me today. So to give everyone an idea, Easter is a Christian holiday that celebrates the belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. In the New Testament of the Bible, the event is said to have occurred 3 days after Jesus was crucified by the Romans and died in roughly 30 AD. The holiday concludes the Passion of Christ, a series of events and holidays that begins with Lent, a 40-day period of fasting, prayer, and sacrifice, and ends with Holy Week, which includes Holy Thursday, the celebration of Jesus' Last Supper with his 12 apostles, Good Friday, on which Jesus' death was observed, and Easter Sunday. Although a holiday of high religious significance in the Christian faith, many traditions associated with the Easter date with Easter date back to pre-Christian pagan times. Easter Sunday is Easter Sunday and related celebrations such as Ash Wednesday and Palm Sunday are considered movable feasts, although in Western Christianity, which follows the Gregorian calendar, Easter always falls on a Sunday between March the 2nd and April 25th. In Eastern Orthodox Christianity, which adheres to the Julian calendar, Easter falls on a Sunday between April the 4th and May 8th each year. In some denominations of Protestant Christianity, Easter Sunday marks the beginning of Eastertide or the Easter season. Eastertide begins on the 50th day after Easter, which is known as Pentecost Sunday. In Eastern Orthodox branches of Christianity, Easter Sunday serves as part of the season of Pascha, or Greek for Easter, which ends 40 days later with the holiday known as the Feast of Ascension. I don't want to sit here and like give you, this is a full A to Z. I will post this link in the show notes. So if anybody wants to read it, and it's not that I'm like brushing off, like I don't want to read everything A to Z. I don't really want to give I want to give this attention, but I don't want to read to you all like you all can't read. I have the article there, just kind of giving like a brief overview related to Easter and its celebration and the tradition and everything involved with it and how it kind of became what it is today. So if anyone, and I didn't really, I know this because I know normally I would participate, but this year I think I was kind of in my own personal headspace, and I'll talk about that as we continue with podcasts every day in April. But normally you will hear the term that people are doing what's called Lent. And a lot of people, when you think of, so before I continue, because I want to make sure that everyone understands, Lent refers to L-E-N-T, not L-I-N-T, like lint in your pocket. So let's get that out the way now so there's no confusion. But Lent is basically you giving up something for 40 days. Now, everyone has different things that they give up or that they consider themselves sacrificing. And it's mostly done to better you or better your aura or your routine. I know sometimes, typically I'd usually say I'd give up social media. This year I didn't do that, obviously, because if I give up social media, then I don't really know how I would share the podcast. But there's other ways to do it. But I just didn't really go into, this is probably one of the first years in a while that I really didn't kind of jump on the Lent trend and doing, and I won't say trend, but the option of deciding to do Lent. And it just was my personal preference. One thing that was stated and mentioned in this article that I always like to share is holidays now are given more significance in what I guess society perceives it as being instead of what it really is all about. Prime example, the observation of the mindset of Christmas being that Christmas is the day that Christ was born. So you would mainly hear, that's what most people look at Christmas as. But typically for kids don't look at it like that. They look at it as, this is the day that I get gifts and presents and may see family and things of that nature. Easter has a similar tradition, but a similar process because it's about the resurrection of Christ. So that's what it's acknowledged as, based on history and how it's, supposedly written. But then the opposite side of it is you have mostly, this is the day when everyone decides to, like I said earlier, dress to the nines and put on their flourishing and lavishing outfits. And some people attend church that never attend too often, things of that nature. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not knocking it in that regard because that's, everyone has their choice and their preference as to who and what they do. What I will say is, and this is key with anything, if it's from the heart and you're being genuine about it, that's really about the most important thing that matters. And I feel like that's very key and very relevant to the equation. Another holiday that's celebrated today, I'm not a big fan of it because sometimes it gets out of hand, and many times you can be doing it being a joke, playing a joke or playing a practical joke, and sometimes practical jokes can go wrong. But today is considered as April Fool's Day. So I have a brief story that talks about that as well. April Fool's Day, sometimes called April Fool's Day. I don't know what the difference is. It looks the same. April Fool's Day, sometimes called April Fool's Day, is one of the most lighthearted days of the year. Its origins are uncertain. Some see it as a celebration related to the turn of the seasons, while others believe it stems from the adoption of a new year. Ancient cultures, including those of the Romans and Hindus, celebrated New Year's Day on or around April the 1st. It closely follows the vernal equinox, which is March 20th or 21st. In medieval times, much of Europe celebrated March 25th, the Feast of Annunciation, as the beginning of the new year. In 1582, Pope Gregory XIII ordered a new calendar, the Gregorian calendar, to replace the old Julian calendar. The new calendar called for New Year's Day to be celebrated and shifted New Year's Day to January 1st. According to a popular explanation, many people either refused to accept the new date or did not learn about it and continued to celebrate New Year's Day on April the 1st. Other people began to make fun of these traditionalists, sending them on fool's errands or trying to trick them into believing something false. Eventually, the practice spread throughout Europe. Problems regarding that explanation. There were at least two difficulties with the explanation. The first is that it doesn't fully account for the spread of April Fool's Day to other European countries. The Gregorian calendar was not adopted by England until 1752, for example, but April Fool's Day was already well established there by that point. The second is that we have no direct historical evidence for this explanation, only conjecture, and that conjecture appears to have been made more recently. Another explanation of the origins of April Fool's Day was provided by Joseph Boskin, a professor of history at Boston University. He explained that the practice began during the reign of Constantine, when a group of court jesters and fools told the Roman emperor that they could do a better job of running the empire. Constantine allowed a jester named Cugel to be king for one day. Cugel passed an edict calling for absurdity on that day, and the custom became an annual event. In a way, explained Professor Boskin, it was a very serious day. In those times, fools were really wise men. It was the role of jesters to put things in perspective with humor. This explanation was brought to the public's attention in an Associated Press article printed in many newspapers in 1983. There was only one catch. Boskin made the whole thing up. It took a couple of weeks for the AP to realize that they'd been victims of an April Fool joke themselves. So mainly, and there are a couple more things that they discuss, and this really isn't a very lengthy article. And again, I'll share this in the show notes as well. So mainly, April Fool's Day is considered to be the day of kind of a silly or somber side. I think the tough part about it, from my personal standpoint with it, is there's no knock against having fun and having a good time. I'm all for it. I'm here for it. That's just the way life can be sometimes. You need to lighten up a little. Sometimes lightening up a little bit helps to live a little bit. That being said, or, with that being the case, sometimes the line can be drawn or go too far where a joke just isn't really a good joke. And I personally, I'll admit it. I'll come clean and say it because it's me. I make a lot of jokes and I have fun with a lot of things. The only problem is sometimes I think by nature, I know the line and I know what I'm willing to put up with or willing to tolerate. But I also know, like, everyone else may not have that same tolerance or that sense of humor. So I take that into account. Now, granted, that's me. I'm only speaking for one person. I can't speak for the entire world. I can't speak for those who choose or do not choose to make decisions accordingly. The main thing that I will say, or the main thing that I will address, is you have to know how to do something without it offending or affecting those involved. And that's just the nicest way to put it. Now, I'm sharing both of these stories because it's rare, and I think this might be the first instance that I am specifically aware of that April Fool's Day and Easter are on the same day. So I'm going to say something, and this is probably going to be my social rant, but I'm going to kind of make this my unique yet Brian-esque closing. Do not use the fact that there's an irony that that two holidays land on the same day that would never land on the same day, and then blend in or use a reference regarding being stay woke. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago, and it was said then, and I'm going to say this now. There's no problem with telling people to keep their eyes open and keep your mind open as to what's going on around you. No knock against that whatsoever. My knock comes into play when it's expected, or this mindset is put into play of stay woke and you should never be asleep. And it's like, you have to sleep. Sleep generates sanity. I personally am known by many of my friends to be stated, and it's addressed constantly, that I really don't sleep. But the reality is that I do sleep. I just take small sets or sections of sleeping. I don't get like one core 8 or 10 hours of sleep. It's just not me. But I'm resting, because most of the time I'm not resting because I'm thinking about something. As many of you all know me, I'm usually thinking about podcasting or just what I'm trying to do next. But I'm sharing all of that just to say, if you're celebrating Easter or have celebrated Easter today, spend time with family, friends, things of that nature. If you're going out to eat, be safe, have a good time. On the flip side, if you're going to have fun and make jokes, be silly. There's no problem with that. Just know the line and respect the line of doing so. And those who have to pay rent today, obviously, if you're paying on a Sunday, if your rental property is open on a Sunday, props to you. But then, of course, you do have the option of being able to mail it in or physically go to check with someone. So that's mainly all I have today. I'm not really going to hit y'all with too much random minutia other than that information that some of you may or may not know, like the origin of how we got Easter to kind of be what it is now, let alone how April Fools got started. A lot of people just know April Fools was the holiday and that was it. So thank you all for tuning in. As I mentioned earlier, if you are looking to get any assistance with podcasting, passpodcastbt@gmail.com. I'm willing that most of my friends, I won't even say friends, anyone who has been interested or really been serious about it, I've done my best in trying to give them the resources. Now, what you do with them is up to you. But that's what I have for today. Thank you all for tuning in. Tomorrow is a big day since this is April. Many people may or may not know this, but I'll share that tomorrow as to the importance of tomorrow's date. But until next time, y'all take it easy. The Paz signing out. Peace. The one point of the show I don't like to reach, but every show must have an ending. So you have made it to the end of yet another episode of the podcast Every Day in April. Continue to tune in. These will be going on from April the 1st until April the 30th. And I will guarantee you that there will be plenty of content and more than enough information to share and address during this show. Thanks for tuning in.